Hello, and welcome to the EU Patients Podcast. Today, we bring you the third and final episode of our mini-series dedicated to the EDiHTA project. In this episode, we turn our focus to the digital medical devices and the growing role they play in shaping how healthcare is delivered across Europe. From connected devices to remote monitoring tools, digital medical devices promise better monitoring, more personalized treatment, and greater patient autonomy. At the same time, they raise important questions around safety, effectiveness, data protection, and trust. Questions that need clear answers before these technologies can be widely adopted and reimbursed. This is exactly where EDiHTA comes in. The project aims to develop a flexible, inclusive, and patient-centered European health technology assessment framework that can properly assess digital health technologies, including digital medical devices, across their entire life cycle. Joining me today is Dave Chuter, a member of the EDiHTA Patient Advisory Group. Dave brings extensive experience as a patient advocate and has been actively involved in the EDiHTA focus groups. He has experience in digital health and patient involvement. He contributed to the development and testing of My Portal at a local NHS hospital in the UK, a secure platform that allows patients to access their appointments and view information from their hospital records. He's also been involved in developing My DICE Companion, a digital tool designed to help patients better navigate their diagnosis. Dave, welcome to the show. Could you start by telling us a bit about your background and how you become involved in the EDiHTA project?
Certainly, yes. My background is a cancer survivor, a esophageal cancer way back in 2006. Started a support group up because I wanted to talk to another patient, and that got me interested in the research and led to where we are now. The devices, connected devices, are so important for many patients, just to see how they can react, how they can give in information towards medical research.
Indeed, as you've mentioned, digital medical devices are everywhere, or starting to be everywhere, and maybe oftentimes they are more complex than apps. They may directly influence clinical decisions or treatment delivery. So my question for you is, from a patient perspective, what makes digital medical devices different, and why is it so important to assess them carefully?
For many patients, having a device like this is it just changes the way they see their treatment, how they're seen as a patient, and how they can have a little bit of influence of what they within their treatment to what they're going through. It does make a huge difference to many patients, and I think it is so important to check to make sure they are fit for purpose for those patients. Patients can understand how to use them, can understand why they're being used, and how it could help them with their treatment.
And you were also part of the EDiHTA focus groups, where patients discuss the benefits and the challenges of digital medical devices. For you personally, what stood out most from these discussions?
What stood out most was that many patients were happy to use something like this. And they saw it as a big part of their treatment moving forward. They could see how it's going to influence how they see their treatment is going, as well as helping the clinicians, the medical team, in understanding what's happening to the patient. There were a few barriers. One of them for me which stood out was that we are often hit with apps, a load of other medical bits and pieces to work with during our treatment, and it can be overbearing, overloading sometimes. But I think mostly patients were happy with using them.
Yes, and speaking of these focus groups, I know that safety and trust were two things that came up repeatedly in the conversations. And oftentimes patients assume that if a device is on the market, it must be safe. But we know that digital devices evolve quickly, very quickly, I must say. What reassures patients when it comes to using digital medical devices, and where do concerns remain?
Concerns still remain with if it's something which is just on the open market anyway. They've no idea who owns it, where their data is going, what's happening with their data. If it's going to somewhere else outside of their medical team. And it is hard for patients to actually trust that particular device. We need to know is exactly what's going to happen with our data, what's going to happen with our input, what's going to happen with all the details about our treatment. Where is it going to go to? And we kind of need that right at the start, right? And it needs to be open and transparent exactly at the start of when we decide to or not to use the device.
And I actually think this is where the EDiHTA framework would have its role. And at the recent co-creation workshop in Brussels, key stakeholders from the project worked together to refine and to validate the EDiHTA framework. Now, from the patient community's perspective, what are maybe some overall reflections on the framework at this stage?
The framework is seen as the most important thing to actually ensure that it's safe to use, to make sure that the standards are set and we know exactly what's going to happen with all our input to the device. And it's just giving patients that reassurance that there is going to be a set standard of what's going to be used, what's going to be taken from the use of these devices. It is hard for many patients to realize that sometimes their data is so important for research as well as their own healthcare, and there's always a public view which is often different to a patient view of how data is used. And it is making sure the framework will make sure that it is open and transparent of what's going to happen with all our data, with all our input.
Yes, certainly the discussions around data, health data, are at the forefront, right, of health policy these days. But I was thinking perhaps looking ahead and also considering the landscape is constantly evolving. In your opinion, looking ahead to how digital medical devices will be evaluated under this EDiHTA framework, what role should patients play in shaping those assessments, and how can they help define what truly matters to them?
Patients will always tell you what truly matters to them, and it's often different to what the medical team think is important to them. Especially, it's not all clinical, it's not all research, it's not all treatment. That is so important to them is well-being, lifestyle, just mental and physical well-being, and quality of life. So it's the patients will bring that kind of understanding of what the framework should be, on how it's going to be beneficial to them, how it's going to work for them, how it's going to achieve what the patients want to achieve out of using the devices, as well as the medical teams. And that can be totally different. It is clear that we need to be involved in the governance side, so we have that say on what can be done and what cannot be done. It's clear that we need to understand the device as well, and get to know how it can be used and how it is going to benefit us. And maybe sometimes we need a little bit of training on how that can be done.
Thank you. As we've seen today, digital medical devices are becoming part of everyday care for many people. And, as Dave shared, they can help patients better understand what is happening during their treatment and feel more involved in it. At the same time, questions around safety, data, and transparency cannot be ignored. Patients want clear information from the start. Who is behind the device, where their data goes, and how will it actually help them? They also want their priorities, including quality of life and well-being, to set clear standards and includes the patient perspective throughout. Thank you, Dave, for your time and your contribution to the project. And thank you all for listening to this final episode of the EDiHTA mini-series. We appreciate you joining us.